let me show you how to almost flawlessly solo the Reckoning's Easter egg for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Zombies. Right, so first off, of course, we're going to start with the loadout, but first I wanted to preface this guide by explaining the reason why I say my guides are almost flawless. It is basically because the way I make my guides is by trying to remove any and all backtracking, as well as, of course, covering all birds with as little stones as possible. That being said, however, of course, let's now get to the loadout. Now, for this, you're going to need something that both has a high DPS as well as high ammo count, which then the best choices for this would be the AS Val or the Maelstrom. Now, for me, I personally went in with the Maelstrom, which you can see the attachments that I use below. And then for the rest of the loadout, I always bring in shock charges and Molotovs because these are extremely useful at getting rid of hordes of zombies. Aside from that, though, I do recommend bringing in Aether Shroud. And then lastly, for the Gobblegums, I mean, of course, if you have Perkaholics and Hidden Power and all that stuff, of course, bring that in. Aside from that, though, I did personally bring in things like double points and temporals. That way you can extend the double points. But if you don't have any of these, then this is a general pack that is probably going to really help you out in the boss. Which now, before we actually get into this, the last thing I'm going to show you is all of the augments that I use, so I'm going to quickly go through those now. Now, as for the setup, that is going to be all for that, so let's go ahead and get to it. Right, so first things first, as soon as you spawn in, you want to turn right and pull out your hands. Then what you want to do is punch this yellow mop bucket until it is in the center of the room underneath the sprinklers. Then at this point, all you got to do is wait for sprinklers to fill it up, but we're going to get back to this much later. Now, from this point on, you're going to want to basically stay in here until hopefully round 10, but no later than round 13. Now, the reason I say this is because on round 5 or 6, you're going to get your first special round. Well, what you want to do on this special round is shoot these robots, but you want to try to aim for the arms, and hopefully one of them will drop you an arm. Which then after this, you should get another special round by no later than round 12, which you will hopefully get the other arm from, which then means by round 13, you should not only have both arms, but you should now have a whole bunch of essence. So what we're going to do then on round 13 is take the right hand side teleporter, and when you get to the top, you want to take an immediate left and then go over to the right hand side of this mangler containment and interact with this container here to grab a syringe. And then once you've grabbed that, you just want to continue on through this room, through the next area, and into the next teleporter. All right, and now that you have landed over here in assembly, we are now going to find the two robots' legs. So first things first, you want to take a right and check underneath this broken TV in the corner here for a potential leg location. Then if you continue down and around the path, you can find another potential leg location in this pile of parts. Then if it's not there, you can find it potentially behind the assembly line itself on the floor in front of this shelf, or in this left-hand corner on top of this shelf. Which then, if it is not in any of these locations, it will be down below where Klaus is inside this doorway. At this point, you should have all 4 parts for Klaus, which you can now place on his body in this area. Which then at this point, you are now done in this area, so let's continue on up towards containment. Which then once you get up here, there's nothing that you can really do right now, so let's go ahead and continue on up to the executive suites. Now, as soon as you land up in these offices, you want to take an immediate left, and inside these rooms, you want to check on this table here next to the fallen lamp for a file, which if you do find the file, you just want to interact with it to note down the file number as well as the month that is shown on this file. Now, once you have noted those down, you want to turn around and look on this small table here for another potential file location. And then whether or not you have found these 2 files, you just want to turn left and open this door here. Now, once you have continued up to the upstairs section, you want to look on this small coffee table here to your left for another potential file location, which if you do not find one here, then you want to look to your right underneath the broken television. Now, after that, you want to continue around through the offices until you reach the main office, and inside here you can find another potential file located on Richthofen's desk, which then also on Richthofen's desk you want to interact with the button to open up the portal to Pack-a-Punch, and then before you actually step into that portal, you want to finally check outside this room on the reception desk for another file location. Now, at this point, before you actually walk into the portal, you should have found 3 files, which means you should have 3 file numbers accompanied by 3 months. If you don't, you want to go back and check those locations that I've already shown you, and if you do, you're good to go ahead through that red portal. All right, now once you have reached the other side, you are now in the Pack-a-Punch room, so let's go ahead upstairs and turn on the power. Now, what you're going to do at this point is hop back down, and you're going to notice that there's going to be a whole bunch of crystals that are going to now appear across this room. Now, they will be marked for you, so all you got to do is just find them and take them down, which is extremely easy. zombie. And then once you've done that, you now have access to the Pack-a-Punch machine. And then it is at this point that you don't want to leave this room just yet. What you want to do instead is jump up into that large beam. Now, you do want to make sure that you don't do this on the side that has the actual platform, as it's just going to push you around. If you jump into the other side, however, it's going to turn you into a ball of energy that you can move around and try to avoid the things that are going to be in the beam. But what you want to do is hit the body of the zombie that is going to be floating there. What's going to happen is if you've correctly hit the zombie's body, it's going to have now fallen on the ground, which you now can use that syringe to get a sample. Now, once you have that, of course, you just want to take the portal that's going to lead you back to the executive offices, which then once you are here, all you want to do is take a left and jump all the way over the railing to fall all the way down and reach the labs. Which then, on that note, if you have stamina up and you've equipped the augments that I've showed you, you won't have any sort of fall damage whatsoever, and you can just yeet it all the way down. However, once you are back down in the lab, you want to replace that syringe where you got it from in that container next to the mangler, and then basically after a few lines of dialogue, that mangler, who is now out, is going to try to attack you. So all you do is just go ahead, take him down, and then pick up the special mutant injection that he's going to drop for you. Once you have picked that up, you want to turn and check this screen to the left of the perk machine, which should have static on it, and all you want to do is just keep watching it until eventually will flash you a hidden word. At this point, you just want to turn around and head over to the other side of the room where you see the giant tank containing Edward's wife and son, and behind this to the right, you will see another static screen. Now, if you got a word on both screens, that's perfect. You just basically want to take the starting letter of each word, which you can then put together, and this should form an element that you can find from the periodic table on your left. Now, if instead you got one screen and one of the other screens basically stayed static and didn't show you anything, then that's fine. That just means you just want to take the one letter from whatever word you got. So, like I said, knowing this, you want to look at that periodic table and find your element that has those two or that one letter, and then it should give you a 2, sometimes a 3-digit number. If it's a 2-digit number, you just want to put a 0 before it. So, for instance, in my game, I had 2 words starting with an A and an S. Therefore, I knew my element was going to be an A and an S, or an S and an A. So then I went up to the periodic table and found my element, which gave me the number 33. So then my code was going to be 033. So then with this information in hand, you just want to go up the stairs and input your 3-digit code into the keypad, which then after this, of course, just enter the room that is now open. And in the back, you should see this spore inside this little container. Now, what you need to do at this point is absorb 3 vermin first, followed by 3 zombies into this spore. Which, keep in mind that you can only do this about 1 zombie every 30 seconds or so. Which then, if you also have not taken out that disciple that spawned when you took out the mangler a second ago, which he should have then spawned in a bunch of vermin that you can use for this step, but keep in mind that this might make this a little bit more difficult. Also, keep in mind that while you are doing this, you're going to want to keep an eye out for a key card that's going to drop on the ground, which is only going to drop in this lab area after you've turned on the Pack-a-Punch. But it should drop 100% by the time you're done in this area. Just keep an eye out for it. However, once you have absorbed all 3 of those vermin and then all 3 of those spiders into that orb, it's now going to open up and then allow you to pick it up. And then once you have the spore and the key card, you want to now go back downstairs where you can now use that key card to open this small lockbox, which is then going to allow you to grab this vial that we will come back to later. Alright, now with all that out of the way though, let's now jump pad back over to the next tower. Now, once you land over here, you want to immediately take your right and go down and take the portal that is going to be directly underneath you. What this is going to do is send you over to where the spores are, and when you land, you want to take your immediate right and stand underneath this plant that you see me doing. Now, what's going to happen is your character is going to then pull that spore out for a little bit, and you're going to need to basically stand here underneath this plant while zombies are attacking you and this plant is spitting at you until basically that bar on the left-hand side of your screen has gone all the way down. Which then, once that's done, you want to open up the door to your right, and inside this on the left, you should see another plant to stand underneath. Which then, once that second one is done, you want to then go back outside but take your right, and your third and final plant will be inside this room, which the best way to do this is to stand on top of the computers. And then it is now at this point, once you have all 3 of these spores collected, that you want to stay in this area until you have pushed to round 16. So the reason I say this is that on round 16, you're going to get your first Uber Klaus, which then we will need Uber Klaus for this next step. So when it is round 16, you want to take that jump pad back over to the tower you came from, and you should then just land right in front of Klaus, which is literally perfect. So what we're going to do at this point is wait for Uber Klaus to show up. Then what you now need to do is bait Uber Klaus to throw his shock charge at you, but you need to get it close enough to the other Klaus, that way it will turn him back on, which then once you have turned him back online, you can just get rid of Uber Klaus. All right, now at this point, if you see that Klaus is standing at this computer and he is not moving by you standing close to him, then that just means that round 17 or your next round is going to be a special round and he won't move. So then in this case, just pass to round 17 and finish that special round, then stand near him and you will notice that he's gonna then want you to escort him. So at this point, just escort him up the elevator to containment, which then when you get up here, he should then go down the steps, and down here should be a SAM trial waiting for you, which of course you just need to then walk him to, and then you can go ahead and activate it. If however at this point you do not see a SAM trial, this happened to me, well basically just pass hopefully only 1 or 2 rounds until it will hopefully show up. But again, it should already be here when you get here. However, once you have activated and completed that SAM trial, he's gonna then go away and you can now follow him all the way up to the top. Now, what's gonna happen is once you reach the top where he is now in front of a locked door, you're gonna wanna use that special mutant injection and then immediately interact with the scanner on the wall to start scanning yourself. Now, what's going to happen if you've done this correctly is that door is then going to open and you just want to let Klaus go inside the portal on his own, which then keep in mind, if you fail this step, you can always go get a new special mutant injection from the lab. However, what we are going to do at this point is we're going to go back to the top of the elevator in this room, and then we're going to interact with this green screen on the computer here. Now, at this point, you're on a very small timer, so what you want to do is just run around this room, and there are now 4 computers that are red that you now need to interact with to turn green, which, as you can see in the video, they are all 4 in this room, and they are all extremely easy to find. Now, what's going to happen is when you've actually activated all 4 of these, you should see electricity has now covered all of the pillars in this room. Also at this time, an Uber Klaus is going to spawn in, and what you now need to do is shoot off the shoulder pads that he has without taking him down, which then once you've done that, you need to get him to then step on top of the pressure plate in front of the Forsaken's cube. And then it is at this point that you now have a small Forsaken mini boss to take down, which has technically 2 little phases, which then during this, I heavily recommend that you use both of the caster traps in this area, as they are going to really help out. However, when you have finished his first and his second form, you should notice that he is now a glowing orb that you want to interact with, which then after second, you can then interact with again to pick up your free Gorg effects. Alright, now at this point, let's go ahead back upstairs and into that red portal that Klaus went into already, which then inside here on this small computer section here, you will find your last paper location. And it is now at this point that you should have all 4 case numbers combined with all 4 months. And what you now need to do is basically organize those numbers, those case numbers, by the month numbers in order. So in my game, I had a 6 and a 6, a 4 and a 9, a 3 and an 8, and then a 5 and a 10. So then that would make my code 6345, which keep in mind that the dates and papers really never change. It just comes down to what papers you get in your game. However, with your 4-digit code now in hand, you want to turn and just input this into the computer in this room. And then once the screen says you've done it correctly, you can now go back through that red portal. All right, now from here, let's go ahead and jump back over to the other tower, and this time go all the way up and into the red portal in the executive office back to the Pack-a-Punch room, which then inside here, you can now go back up to where you turned the power on and flip a switch on the left side, which is now going to start an overdrive. So what's now going to happen is everything in this room is going to turn red, and there's now going to be 5 quantum vermin that are going to show up around this area. What you now need to do is just shoot all 5 of these quantum vermin with that Gorg effects, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Then basically all you do is wait for this area to cool back down again, and when it is on cooldown, you can now take the Gorg effects, walk up to that control center, and grab the blue orb, which will then put it on the Gorg effects. Which then once you have this, now we're going to go ahead back through the portal to the executive offices, and then once again, we're going to hop over the railing and drop all the way down until we get to the area with all the fungus in it. Which then, once you now have landed down here, you want to basically melee this rectangular computer looking thing, which will open and show a purple brain. Now, at this point, you want to grab this brain and then do your best to follow the path that you see me taking in the video, but keep in mind that if you do this at a slow enough pace, you could potentially lose this brain as it will dry out, which then I do believe you need to go another round to regrow another one. However, once you have followed the path like I'm showing you in the video and you've reached all the way up to that room where Klaus is, you want to then quickly put it into the machine to his left, which then immediately after this, you should still have that blue charge on your Gorg effects, where you now want to use it and charge up a shot and shoot it at the crystals on the portal, which then immediately after the crystals are broken, you can go ahead and use this. Which then on that note, really quick, while you are actually using this portal, there is a very small chance that you could actually hit a barrier that could cause you damage and potentially even take your quick revive away from you, so just be careful. However, once you are now parachuting down again, this time you want to drop back back into the room with all the fungus in it. Then once you get here, you want to look up to where you see me looking and shoot one of your charged Gorgafex shots up into this little balcony area. And if you've done it correctly, you should see it knock down a fungal head, which then once you've got that, drop back down through the hole in the floor all the way back down to spawn, and then go to where I had you interact with that mop bucket, which should now be filled with water, which at this point you want to go ahead and interact with it to place that head in the bucket. And then this bucket with this head is now a soul box, which takes a lot of souls, but you will know it's done when his eyes start to glow purple, which when they do, go ahead and pick up the head and then walk him through the red portal on your left. Now, on the other side of this, of course, is going to be the pack room. You just want to continue to walk him all the way through this pack room slowly. Then you want to make sure that when you get to the offices, you go down the stairs and take the jump pad across to the containment area. Then, of course, just go up the stairs through the red portal into the room where Klaus is. And this time you want to go over to the blue portal and input the head into the blue portal. All right, now at this point, you now can go back over to where Klaus is on the other side. And behind him, there should be this rectangular blue box that is now open. And inside of it is the special Casimir devices, which essentially means we get to now play Pokemon. So then once you've grabbed one, you now can go back through that red portal one more time. And once you get back over to the executive offices, you want to go down the stairs and interact with this wooden door right here, which is going to then give you some interactions with Blanchard, which then once you have spoken to Blanchard, we are now going to search this upstairs area for 3 purple items. Now, normally I would literally show you guys every location, but these purple items, they move around, so they kind of show you all their locations anyways. On top of that, they also make loud noises, and then if you get close enough to them, they will affect your vision. So what you do when you find one of these 3 items, which there will be a flower vase, a coffee cup, a couch cushion, or potentially a box of files. However, what you do when you find it is you want to make sure that you stay a good distance away, but you want to throw that special Casimir at it to capture it, like I said, like a Pokemon. Which then once you've captured one, you want to go up the stairs to where that red portal is, and you can find another blue container with another special Casimir to grab. Which then now just go around this top floor again and find the second item, then come back here after a little while and grab another special Casimir, and then find that third item on this top floor. Which then once you have found all 3 of those purple items from the top floor, you want to come back and grab another special Casimir, and then this time you just want to jump or teleport all the way back down to the lobby. And now we are at this point almost done with this guide. We're almost to the boss fight, but there's one more thing we got to do. So while we're down here, we are going to find one more purple item, and then of course just use that special Casimir to absorb it. And then once you've done that and you have all 4 of those collected, you now technically have done all of the steps for the Easter egg. But let's go ahead and finish upgrading the Gorgafex. So from here, you want to enter the side room with the red portal in it, and you want to press this red button. What's going to now happen is a maintenance Klaus is going to come out, and he's going to start hacking into one of the computers at the front desk. Of course, I'm sure you've guessed it, what you now need to do is protect him while he hacks this computer, which then once he's done hacking it, he's going to then just fly away, and the left side elevator will shut down, with the right side elevator being the one that you want to take. Which then once you get to the top, you want to just drop down the hole in this lab room, and then at the bottom here, you want to go for this shutdown elevator. Now what you want to do at the top of this red elevator is jump into it and pull your parachute. Now on your way down, there are going to be 3 buttons that you need to press that's going to then reboot this elevator, which then once you have repaired it, it's going to put you back at the top of the elevator, and you should now notice that there is an orb in front of you. All you do at this point is just follow the orb back into the main room, and then you want to pay attention because there's going to start to be zombies going around that are basically glowing blue. And what you want to do is just eliminate these guys with the Gorgafex. Which then after you've eliminated a handful of these glowing zombies, you should notice that in the front of this area, a Ghost of Panos has now showed up, which you just want to interact with while your Gorgafex is out. And then after a short animation, he's going to get absorbed into the Gorgafex, and you now have upgraded to the blue variant. Which technically this is not the best variant, but it is the easiest variant, and is also going to allow you to now pack-a-punch this, which I wouldn't go max 2-pack on this. However, it is now at this point that you are basically boss ready, but it is now time to, of course, get boss ready. So what I recommend doing, of course, is going a few rounds and getting as much money as you possibly can. Make sure that your Maelstrom is pack 3 legendary if you can. And then, like I said, don't go past pack 2 on the Gorgafex. And then, of course, past that, make sure that you have a self-revive, make sure that you got a 3-plate, and then I highly recommend that you bring in a death machine. Do not, and I repeat, do not bring in a chopper gunner. It is not going to work for this boss fight. However, what you do want to bring in is probably a free fire, maybe an insta to go along with the free fire, and maybe something like a max ammo, because Lord knows you're going to need all the ammo you can get in this boss fight. However, once you are now fully upgraded and you think you are ready for this, you want to now go back up to the room that Klaus is waiting in, and inside here you want to interact with this machine to place all 4 of those special Casimir devices. What's now going to happen is a bunch of zombies are going to start pouring out of that portal, and you should now also hear an alarm sounding off. What this is signaling is that there's 1 of 5 buttons around this area that is now flashing red. What you now need to do is interact with that flashing red button, which will turn it blue. Then you just survive an onslaught of zombies until you hear that alarm again. You find your 2nd red flashing button, then your 3rd red flashing button, then your 4th, and then finally your 5th. And honestly, this step is extremely simple. However, once you have finished that simple lockdown, it is now time for the boss fight. So once again, double check everything, and once you feel like you're ready, go ahead and interact with that portal. And on that note, let's talk about the boss fights. And yes, I said fights. So right off the rip, this map has 2 boss fights, which obviously, spoiler warning ahead, if you don't want to actually see or hear anything about the boss fights, this is your time to click away. But for those people that are still here, in this map you can fight either Samantha or Richtofen depending on who you choose. However, the way that the boss fight actually starts is going to be the same on either side. So basically, you're going to start out on this giant elevator. When you go and interact with the center pedestal, it's going to ask you if you want to side with Richtofen or Samantha. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and choose Richtofen. Now then, what's going to happen is the elevator is going to start to rise up after a very small cutscene, and then eventually it's going to stop and it's going to open up on the sides. Now, what you need to do is basically go around the outside edge, and you need to find the 3 generators that are going to be 1 on either side and 1 in the middle. What you need to do is, of course, just fill up these generators with souls. And then once all 3 generators are filled with souls, you can get back on the elevator and go up further. Which then, once again, you will stop one more time at a later level. And on this one, you just need to go around the outside edges and shoot every single purple crystal that you can possibly find. Which then, of course, once you've shot all the crystals and they tell you that you've done a good job, you can get back on the elevator one more time. Which then it is at this point that the elevator is going to raise up to the top, and we now have the actual boss fight. And admittedly, Samantha is the easier one, although it's not necessarily easy, but Richtofen is way more difficult, which then on that note, I'm just going to put that in its own separate video. However, as for the Sam boss fight, the first thing that you're going to notice is that most of the time Sam is going to be immune. So basically what I recommend then is that while she is flying around and she's mostly immune, that you instead focus on the zombies around you. That way you can have a chance at getting armor plates and extra cash. Periodically, however, you'll notice that she's going to return to the middle and she's going to start spinning, which will then give you a small window of opportunity to do some damage to her. But make sure that you don't get hit by the electricity she's throwing out, which I found that a good way to do this is make sure that you stay on top of the vents when this is happening. However, the real damage then comes from the later step where she is going to then perform a laser attack. And what you need to do is then, once you see her laser, get ready to attack her, because the second that her laser stops, she's going to then reveal 4 red spots that are going to be her weak spots. So basically, to recap, you just want to run around and survive while she's flying around, and then the second that you see her start to laser, you want to get ready, because then when she stops lasering, you're going to have her weak spots. Which then, of course, this is more or less the entire loop. Eventually, however, once you've done enough damage, she will teleport away, and then she's going to give you a random SAM trial to complete, which is not really the end of the world, but if you don't complete the SAM trial, you will get a small, grief applied to you, which then if you do complete the SAM trial, you'll just get a free perk drop. Apart from this, however, though, she will then eventually start to teleport around large portals in the sky while also dropping out a bunch of zombies from these portals. And I just recommend using this time, of course, like I said before, to get ammo and plates. But then, like I said, that's basically the loop. You just want to survive while whittling down her health slowly enough to expose those weak points where most of the damage will come from. Which then, keep in mind that once you break all 4 of those weak points, it's going to allow you to shoot her in the direct eyeball in the center, which is going to do a whole lot more damage. Which then, by the time that her health bar is at about a quarter left, she's obviously going to be her fastest and most aggressive form. And this is then when I'm going to recommend that you use any and all support that you still have. So that means any gobblegums or anything that you have, especially that death machine. Which then the only thing that I guess I really have to warn you about for the final phase, the final quarter of her life, is that sometimes she will throw you into the air, and you just need to make sure that you actually parachute and land on the roof. Which then, on that note, once you have just done this entire loop and slowly whittled her health away, congratulations, you have now beat one of the hardest bosses in Black Ops 6 Zombies. However, that is going to be it on this video. Hopefully it helped you out. I know it took me a whole lot of effort to make this. So if it did help you out, please help me out with a like and a share. Otherwise, don't forget to hit that follow on your way out so you don't miss when I post the best solo guides for Black Ops 7 Zombies when that drops in October. And aside from that, I'll see you guys around.